Okay, here we go. This is part three, the radial nerve and veins, which is the weirdest word in upper extremity, and I'm not sure if I'm ever pronouncing it right. Veins, whatever. There it is. Okay, so let's move on here. Radial nerve regeneration, radial nerve damage. How do you know if somebody has radial nerve damage? Generally speaking, they can't extend their wrist. They can't extend their wrist, the digits. Um, See it sometimes with shoulder fractures. Wax that radial nerve coming down through the plexus. Same kind of deal around other things. Slow return. Here's the progression of the return. Again, would be helpful in the clinic. Starting to come back, you can kind of track it with your patient, kind of help them through this whole process. It can again be a slow process of regeneration. All right, so shifting again, there isn't a lot of syndromes or compartments with the radial nerve, which is kind of good once you get out of the neck. It's unlike the median and the ulnar nerve. Don't see so many issues in the hand as you do those two. So it's kind of FYI, but not as big a deal clinically speaking. What is a big common deal clinically is this Dequervain's disease. What is that? It is swelling. This can't really see it good right there. First dorsal compartment. This is that first dorsal compartment right there. This is the bottom of the snuff box. We all know about the snuff box, right? Some of us have good ones. Some of us are kind of hidden, but it's all there somewhere. At the bottom of the snuff box is this first dorsal compartment. Those two tendons right on top of each other. Really hard to distinguish between the other. We have the abductor pollicis longus and the extensor pollicis brevis. One does the radial abduction. The other one extends the MP joint there. So how many times are you radially abducting and extending your thumb? You are doing that constantly throughout the day, especially if you're in a job or a lot of repetitive tasks, especially if you're big into texting. So what happens? It gets swollen, starts to swell, pushes within this compartment because, again, there's no space. That's our theme for today, space. Not much space there. It starts to have all these terrible things happen, and you get pain in your thumb right around here. It's very common. I had some of this last spring before I got rid of it. Typing, just a lot of thumb motions can inflame it. How do you test for it? I think you all know this. The Finkelstein's test. The ideal way to do this test is passively. So as the therapist, you passively deviate their hand with the fist, and you do it to both sides. And you have to do it to both sides so you don't get a false negative. It's not a definitive test, but it can give you a good idea that there's something going on here. Why this test? Again, these tests are all very, very logical. If you know your anatomy, you don't really have to memorize the test. You just need to know your anatomy really well. This is the issue here, and you're just putting strain. You're reducing the space in there, just like you are with the Phalen's test. And if you do that, it's going to aggravate all this stuff. There's the abductor pollicis longus coming down through that sheath. Rubbing the APL, abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, of the tendons of the first dorsal compartments. Rubbing. At times it starts to fray. The end stages starts to fray. Then you're kind of in trouble. Can't really get rid of it, or really difficult to get rid of it at this point. Part of the pinching, gripping. Talked about the baby's thumb, mommy's thumb, with the deviated thumbs all the time. Dequervain's, that's what we're talking about. Similar to a string through a straw, those tendons. They're sliding back and forth through the straw. And so much motion eventually just catches and frays, especially as you get older, swells, problems. The longer you have it, the harder it is to get rid of it. May need to treat more proximally from compartment near intersection to be effective. We'll get into that in a second, treatment. Okay, so this is the famous guess the test. Used to do this in the beginning of class every time pre-COVID. Might get into this a little bit in the lab. All these different tests you need to know, they're kind of piling up. We're just talking about the tests around nerve issues. I don't think we're going to get into all the shoulder tests. It's not really cumulative, the final exam. The written part of the final exam anyway. But you do need to know the ruse. That carries over because of all these It's so closely connected to all these upper extremity syndromes in the hand and the elbow. So this is kind of a progression. Number one, if higher up, so if you're doing these peripheral tests, so you're doing the Phalanx test, but you think, oh, maybe it's carpal tunnel, and you do the Phalanx test, nope. Maybe it's pronoid teres, and you do the pronoid teres test, and oh, that's negative. Maybe it's tunnel of Guyon, I'll do that test. I'll do the Decker veins test. I'll do the elbow flexion test. Doing all these tests, and lo and behold, they're all negative. What do you start to think? Okay, now we're thinking again. All the peripheral tests are negative. What do you do? Go proximally. Go up to the neck, where we started this class. Remember in the neck? So you do Sperling's compression test. You do the Ruse test. I want to see if that plexus is compressed further up. Is it in the neck? Is it in the scalenes? I want to check out those tests. They've got terrible posture. I'm thinking, he doesn't have carpal tunnel. He's got TOS. So test that out. Because you may deal with that in the final and deal with that in real world. If the Phalanx and Tendons is positive for that median nerve pathway, think carpal tunnel syndrome. If negative Tendons at wrist, positive Tendons at forearm, further up. Forearm pain, tingling with elbow flexion, pronation, think pronator teres syndrome. Pain with the Struthers ligament. Positive Ballantyne's, possible anterior osseous syndrome, AIS involvement. Positive Finkelstein, Decker veins. Positive Grinds, CMC arthritis. Positive ferments, Wartenberger's, possible ulnar nerve damage. Positive elbow flexion test. You can do this up to 5 minutes. I've been doing that in the lab. You can do it up to 5 minutes with your clients. Possible cubital tunnel syndrome, ferment sign for cubital tunnel and ulnar nerve damage. Also, it can be multiple things at the same time. Don't want to freak you out with that, but it can be PTS, CTS, ulnar, median, all that stuff in real world gets kind of jumbled together. All right, so let's finish this and we'll go into the